In this module, we're going to talk about situational leadership and how it applies to the 4 types of problems. As I mentioned, there were several things influencing me when I wrote the book, and I want to cover the last of them before we dive into the 4 types in the next modules. Like the Kolb learning styles, situational leadership breaks up into four quadrants and 4 styles. And interestingly, they align very nice with what I experienced during my career at Toyota, and also with the 4 types of problems and what you're asked to do throughout your career at Toyota. So I'll make this link, and then we'll jump into the next modules, which have the types one by one. Now, most people are familiar with the topic of situational leadership, but for those who aren't, I encourage you to study it. It's the subject of a very famous book and research done by a couple of gentlemen, Paul Hersey, Kenneth Blanchard, and Dewey Johnson. And they've written a book called The Management of Organizational Behavior, and it's gone through many updates and additions over the years. But it outlines the fact that there is no one style that's perfect for all situations and all people. Okay? They actually use the phrase sometimes different strokes for different folks to make this point. And ideally, with situational leadership, what they're trying to help leaders do is develop people and obtain a better result through partnering with people and working together. And I like to point out that that's pretty similar to the Toyota Way framework. If you think about it, continuous improvement, working together to get a better result, and respect for people means engaging them in their work, getting them to think about it, problem solve, and challenging them, which changes through your career. Just like I'll point out, there's not one type of problem solving that's exact in all cases for Toyota. I'm going to make the analogy using situational leadership. There's not one style of leadership either. Now, an entire course on situational leadership would take several days, and you can go into extensive detail on this topic. So again, if you're interested, I encourage you to read a book, find a local trainer on this topic, and go through the material. But here in 10 minutes, I can give you the highest level overview and link it to my 4 types of problems. Situational leadership basics consists of 3 phases. One is diagnosis, the second is flexibility, and the third is the partnering for performance notion. And each of these have many subpoints beneath them that we can't go into today. But I will have a coaching and leadership course on this site in the future. So check back if you're interested in that. The diagnosis phase is where you start. Okay? You don't start just applying your way. You don't force your way of thinking or your style upon the person right off the bat, as that can be off-putting. In the diagnosis phase, they talk about 3 C's. You diagnose the person's competence, commitment, and their condition, and see how these affect upon them. And I'll just talk about the competence part for simplicity. They break situations up into what they call the 4D cases: D1, D2, D3, D4. And these are development stages that everybody goes through, okay, on a new task. You're not one level forever in your life. You can be an expert in one thing, but as soon as you start a new topic or new task, you're in that beginner bucket again. So I'm good at several things in life, but if you give me a tennis racket, I'm not good. I don't know anything about tennis. I would be a D1 or a beginner. And they call that first D1 bucket the enthusiastic beginner, because many times in life when you get a new job, a new position, you start a new hobby, or start training in something new, it's very exciting and fun, and the newness just gives you a lot of excitement and motivation, and you're just excited to go forward. And they call that the enthusiastic beginner, D1. Beyond that, okay, you progress over time to what they call the D2 stage, and the nickname associated with D2 is disillusioned learner. Now you have more capability in D2 because you've been doing it for a while, but sometimes your will starts to lag a little bit. The excitement factor is kind of worn off. It's not shiny and new anymore. It's not as much fun as it once was. And you become slightly disillusioned. Now you don't coach people the same way in this D2 bucket. I'm going to give some Toyota examples as we go through this. Beyond D2 is D3. Now D3 further in your development, your career, and your task journey of competence that you're working on is still higher, but it might vary it sometimes. Because sometimes you're just not engaged. Maybe you're really tired of this particular job or task. The excitement's gone out, and your will and your skill level can fluctuate quite a lot in this D3 box. But you have the capability. There's no question. You've done this for X number of years or some period of time and developed competence. There's no doubt behind the fact you have considerable skill and will, but sometimes it fluctuates quite a bit. And again, you coach this quadrant differently, as we'll talk about. And the last quadrant is D4. That's the ideal case where everyone's a peak performer. If you're in this bucket, you rise to this level over time. Their skill, their confidence, their commitment is really good, and you can just, of course, delegate to this bucket, and it's a wonderful world. So we call it D4 for the peak performer. And you start by, again, diagnosing the person's skill to the task, and then you start aligning your leadership style, your coaching style to it, because it needs to flex. The argument, the main point behind situational leadership and the 4 styles within it is you have to flex to be an effective leader. You cannot lead with one size fits all. And you may have a style you like, you may be most comfortable with it, you may use it in every situation, but it's not guaranteed to be the most effective for the learner based upon where they're at. So the 4 leadership styles that you learn in situational leadership, and you role play, you read case studies about them, and you do some activities to help you develop your skills, are called, the 4 styles are simply called S1, S2, S3, and S4 for simplicity. And S1 box is giving good direction or being directive. And I don't mean being a drill sergeant in any way, shape, or form. Giving good direction means explaining stuff like major steps, key points, reasons why, what to do, how to do, why to do it, and being patient and very clear. And that's very important and works well with people who are in that D1 box of being an enthusiastic beginner. You know, think of a freshman on a sports team. They're excited to be there. They accept coaching really well, and they're just happy to hear it and go forward. The S2 box, they call coaching. You know, it's kind of confusing because sometimes we think of all 4 of these boxes as coaching, but in the Hersey, Blanchard, Johnson model, this particular box, S2, is what they called coaching. And this is where, again, you're going to be high direction because they're still learning. You've got things to teach them, but also higher on the support. You got to realize that people will get frustrated over time. You can slump. You can have difficulties as you handle more difficult tasks or cases over time. And in this coaching box in particular, you're really trying to help figure out why they're struggling and what advice you can give that helps them move forward. S3 is called supporting. And again, this is 1 notch higher, okay, 1 notch better as the person develops. Okay? They might be stuck at times, but they have that skill and will overall. But if their performance is lagging, you work with them and figure out why. You have to be an active learner, an encouraging type of person, figure out where the morale is lagging or what's potentially troubling them, and help them see the situation from your point of view, give them a challenge or something to work on to make it fresher, different, more exciting, new, or some small twist in some way that makes it interesting again. And of course, beyond that is the last quadrant of matching D4 cases to S4 style leadership. Now, S4 style leadership is delegating. Everybody wants to do that. You'd love to delegate more. Guess what? In this model, you delegate. It shows that delegation works best when you have people ready for that level of assignment. If you delegate to a beginner in D1, they won't understand or what to do. Same thing. If you delegate to somebody in that coaching box, S2, they're going to struggle. D2, S2 box, they're going to struggle. Just delegating is not enough. I would frankly call it abdication of leadership when you attempt that style. And many teams are frustrated by this. I hear this from employees all the time. They just dump this in our lap and don't give us any background, any directions, any reasons why, and say they're empowering us or something like this, but we have no idea what they want. So there's often a mismatch of cases and styles from both sides of you. Now let me give you a little bit of insight, my experiences at Toyota and the cases D1, S1, and how they stereotypically work out over your career, even in a few years at Toyota. Okay, the D1, S1 situation is what you match up for people who are eager to learn, and the leader is going to supply good direction, and that's beneficial for both sides. This is sometimes jokingly called my way. For simplicity, it's my way. And you got to remember, there is a Toyota way. Right? You don't join the company and start enforcing your way over the Toyota way. You don't have 280,000 people each doing their own way, freelancing, doing whatever they want, especially first day on the job. You start by learning the Toyota way, okay? And it's fairly directive, but it's good direction. The easiest analogy I can make for those of you who know it is the old TWI job instruction training program where you learn a new task. And what do? They sit you down and patiently take you through that new task and teach you the major steps, the key points, and the reasons why. Because they want you to understand all of that, the what, the how, and the why. And they're going to take you through multiple iterations until you're comfortable, capable, and they can start to leave you alone and let you work on things. That was my first day on the line making engines at Toyota, right? I didn't get to assemble the engine any way I wanted. There was job instruction training, and there were standardized work charts which broke out the elements and the times that I was to follow. So Toyota has some very natural ways for leaders to handle this D1, S1 interaction case in a positive manner. Up from that is the matching of D2 and S2, okay? And this is sometimes called, it's still my way, but your input, okay? It's a two-way street. The first case has some two-way street in it, obviously, back and forth. But this one really amps up the two-way nature of the dialogue and the talking and the going back and forth to see what you understand, where you're struggling with. But the notion behind D2 and S2 is you're ready for a bit higher challenge, okay? But you're probably still going to struggle on some things. So a really good example, and you may experience this even in a few months to your first year in Toyota, is you're given what we used to call an A3 report, or your first problem-solving assignment. And today this is called Toyota Business Process, Practical Problem Solving. It's the latest and greatest as of this point in time as an 8-step method, but it hasn't changed that much over the decades. And the idea is I'm going to give you some steps to follow. Steps like define the problem, break down the problem, set a goal, analyze root causes. But guess what? You're going to work on them and you're going to struggle a little bit. You're going to have to collect data. You're going to have to observe. You're going to talk to people and work your way through a problem. But you're going to receive coaching. We're not going to let you struggle, flounder too much. But we're going to assess where you're at, watch you, give advice from a good mentor, from a good leader, and help you on that problem-solving journey through the D2, S2 phase on this one example of a task. All right. Next, in time, in your career, as you develop, and you've done multiple types of problems and solved many issues, and you're very good at your job, we're still going to, task you even further. It's a natural progression. You've demonstrated competence. In this D3, S3 bucket, sometimes there's a decline in will, or we call it the reluctant contributor mode, where your skill and will seem to be variable, but reality is you're just not quite as engaged as you once were, despite the fact you're quite capable. So in these cases in Toyota, it's an improvement project, or we're going to stretch you to think about something new, so it's your way, but with my input, okay? So you can take standardized work and Kaizen it, okay? Improve it, do a little project from a product line, a process, or piece of software and say, look, I want you to remake this. I want you to do it your way. I'm going to give you some input still. You don't get 100% free reign, and I'm going to check with you at certain points and make sure it's going smoothly. But it's a way to invigorate you, challenge you, take your skill set to the next level, and make you think outside of your normal box. Get you a little bit out of your comfort zone, hopefully invigorate you, motivate you, and challenge you some more. And this is, again, respect for people and development requires this sometimes. D4S4 case. Now in Toyota, again, there's some percentage of the population. It's not everybody. They're very skilled. They're peak performers, highly confident, committed, and capable. And with these people on your staff, you do absolutely delegate to them because you're trying to prepare them for the next position. Right? Sometimes you do this even before a promotion just to help them get ready for it. You give them a big project that'll get them recognition and get eyes on them. Or a great example, if you're familiar with it, is the example of a chief engineer. You've worked with the company 15 or 20 years, for example. You get to design the next Corolla, the next Prius, or the next Lexus or something. Or you might be in production engineering and you get to design the next block line or next welding piece of equipment or next assembly line or something like that. Or IT, HR, you might have a new system to set up involving software and training and doing something unique we haven't done before. But the idea is, again, you're going to do something that stretches you, and largely it's going to be delegated to you. There'll be checkouts and reports, obviously, but they're trusting you to carry the ball across the line. Okay. Now, let me explain why I like to link these to the 4 types of problems. And granted, like Kolb, it's not a perfect one-for-one alignment, okay? But there's some shades of gray in this. But in the S1D1 case at Toyota, when you're starting out, the type of problem solving you most experience is type 1 troubleshooting. You learn the job, you learn the SOP, the job instruction, the standardized work, but as things run afoul or go off a little bit, you pull something called an andon cord, you signal the abnormality, somebody comes over and helps you sort it out, you take their direction, and over time you learn the standard procedure for repairing many, many things, fixing it yourself, and develop in that way. But in that S1D1 box, predominantly new workers, they're going to work on that style of daily troubleshooting with what I call the 4 C's. Okay? And we'll see that in the next module. Now, a level up from that, as people evolve and grow into the D2, D3 category, D2, S2 mode, okay? That's what the Hersey-Blanchard model calls coaching, and we're going to give you problems to solve, but we don't know the answer. We don't know the root cause, okay? You're going to work on it. You're going to struggle a bit. You're going to go through the steps. That's typically a type 2 gap from standard problem. In the old days, your first problems were around quality, delivery, productivity, or something that you could relate to and was part of your job in your area. You'd have to solve a problem or we didn't know the root cause. Okay? Test your thinking on that and help you with coaching. D3S3, well, that's what I link to target state, okay? The third type of problem-solving routine. You've demonstrated the first 2 boxes already. We want to stretch you and encourage you to do something above and beyond your job so it seems new, seems better, and you grow in the process of doing that. I'm not going to leave you 100% alone, but I'm going to expect you to lead and others to follow you. It's not only a test of your ability to perform, but your test of your ability to lead others as well. And the last box, the D4S4 category, well, that's delegating, okay? Matching peak performers to delegating situations. And that's very open-ended problem solving in many cases. They can do type 1, type 2, and 3 as well. They've already demonstrated that though. So many times for these people on your staff, or many people, getting to certain managerial positions in Toyota with many years of experience, they're going to give you open-ended tasks, break through. Find out how this works. Invent something in a new space. Make something better than before. Break the mold. Just don't do the same old thing. And that's very much the way you were expected to develop in Toyota over your career in any given position or situation. And again, you'll be given different tasks over time and your levels of ability will fluctuate, but the idea is we match our leadership and coaching style to the person and the situation. One size does not fit all. So in this model, what we covered is Situational Leadership 101. Again, there will be a deeper dive course and study on this coming in the future. I outlined the 4 basic styles, the development levels and the styles that you flex to coach. I line them up and explain their relationship to my 4 types of problems. And again, no framework is perfect by any means, but directionally I think it lines up well with Kolb, the 4 types of problems and situational leadership. And now we're going to start moving into the actual types one by one. Next module will begin with type 1 troubleshooting. I'll lay that out and explain that in greater detail. Thank you.